Thank you very much, Simon, for introducing me so kindly. Yes, indeed, I spent many weeks of my life on the African continent. I was a program manager at one stage for WWF, the conservation organization. But since then, I mean, quite a journey to become executive director of Entrepreneurship, and that story is for another day. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to give you really just an overview of what GEM is and what GEM can do, what kind of information we can provide, especially to policymakers the world over. So to do that, I'm just going to share my presentation.
Yes, we'll make you co-host shortly.
Oh, I can't share my screen yet. If somebody can just.
Oh yes, yes. So we'll just a second, please.
Okay.
Okay, please go ahead, Aileen.
Okay. So. All right, is that clear? Does everyone see that? Does everyone see that? Is my presentation clear to everyone? Can you see the screen? Yes?
Yes, we can see the screen.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's get going. So I thought, you know, the main question I want to answer here is what insights does 2020-21 GEM research provide about COVID-19 impacts on entrepreneurship worldwide, but also actually in Africa. And there are two things that we've been working on during this really very turbulent period. The first is, you know, on the right-hand side of your screen there, we looked rather more qualitatively than anything else at diagnosing COVID-19 impacts on entrepreneurship. And I encourage you to have a look at our website, gemconsortium.org, to understand, you know, the sheer impact of the COVID-19 impacts on entrepreneurship, and also the kind of immediate reaction of policymakers to the first weeks and months of the virus and the pandemic around the world. It's really kind of iconic, that particular report, because it really is the kind of gut-wrench reaction to the pandemic out there. But here in this presentation, I'm mainly going to talk about the global report, which essentially was launched just on Monday this week. We had a launch event, and I'm just going to show you some of the results from the global report. But first of all, what is GEM? I mean, I'm sure there are people sitting there saying, well, what is GEM anyway? GEM is made up of national research teams that are primarily associated with top academic institutions, and they carry out survey-based research on entrepreneurship around the world. We're mostly funded by governments or policy-making organizations. Basically, we are the only global research source that collects data on entrepreneurship directly from individual entrepreneurs. It's a very, very rich resource for information on the status of entrepreneurship worldwide and within nations. And we publish not only the global report, but a range of global, national and specific topic reports annually. So, you know, if you see any, as you will, African countries pop up in our analyses in the next few graphics, later on this year, you will see a national report being issued by GEM related to that particular country. We've got about 22 years of data, and over that 22 years, we have surveyed over 3 million adults. About 114 economies have participated at one point or another in our research. We have over 500 specialists in entrepreneurship research engaged with us, more than 300 academic institutions and over 200 funding or sponsoring institutions, which, as I said before, are mainly governments and policymakers. Also foundations interested in entrepreneurship. What's our means of gathering data? Well, there's the GEM Adult Population Survey, which it really provides analysis on the characteristics, motivations, and ambitions of individuals starting businesses, like, for example, the last speaker, as well as social attitudes towards entrepreneurship. And then the GEM National Expert Survey, actually Alicia Coduras, who is here with us today, she is the National Expert Survey Coordinator. Her survey focuses on the national context in which individuals start businesses and how conducive they are to actually promoting entrepreneurship. So in 2020, these are the economies that actually participated in our surveys. As you can see, for Middle East and Africa, well, from the Sub-Saharan area, we have a kind of reduced sample. I mean, one of the reasons for this is it's actually difficult for some of the African teams to source funding in order to carry out the study. But we're actively really searching African teams. Anyway, we have put Africa with the Middle East in terms of a region, and so mostly it will appear on the right-hand side of the graphics throughout the presentation. Just really very quickly, just to show the sheer impact of COVID-19 in terms of cases per 1 million of population as of the 30th of August 2020. Why do I say 30th of August 2020? It's around that time that we actually stopped collecting the data because the research cycle, it was planned that way. So we're really going to be looking at, in the presentation, at the first 6 months of impact. This means that our report next year, our results next year, will be even more telling about impact because, of course, 6 months is not really enough. We're really in this, I think, for the next few years, watching the impact of COVID-19 play out. But in any case, many cases, as you can see, Sub-Saharan Africa, again, is at the right-hand side of the screen. That region was not at that stage too greatly affected. The deaths per million in neither, you know, not at that stage, not too greatly affected, but North Africa more so. But the deaths per million, I mean, really, a graphic like this just shows that it really wasn't just a few countries, you know, it's really worldwide impact that we're talking about here. So that being the case, what we had 43 economies in the adult population survey this year, which we obviously, because of the economies across the globe, we took a little bit of a hit in terms of the participation this year. It's going to be better this. It's going to be better for this next research cycle. But we had 43 economies participating in the adult population survey, and 45 in the National Expert Survey. For the adult population survey, this actually does mean about 135,000 survey respondents. So the graphics that you're going to see are actually very telling of the overall situation. One new question that we asked was whether the pandemic had led to changes in household income. There were only 6 economies where the proportion reporting a fall was less than 1 in 3. All of those were in Europe and North America. And do remember that Europe and North America had, you know, very much the furlough locking schemes, subsidization going on. So compared to 13 economies where more than 2/3 of adults reported falls in household income. Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah. We also asked the question, tell us about whether you know someone who has started or stopped a business due to the pandemic. And more people knew somebody who had stopped a business due to the pandemic than knew someone who had started a business for the same reason, especially in Europe and North America and in the Middle East and Africa. In Latin America and Caribbean, 4 out of 6 economies had more people knowing a starter of a business because of the pandemic than a stopper, if you like. The share of adults seeing good opportunities to start a business in their area in 2020 was lower in more than 2 out of 3 economies than in 2019. And there were 35 economies that participated in both the adult population survey. There was little change in the percentage of adults seeing good opportunities in Central and East Asia, and small changes in Latin America and Caribbean, and falls in most of Europe and North America, and very mixed in the Middle East and Africa region, and really sharp falls in Israel and Iran, but increases in Oman and Saudi Arabia. Okay, one of the things that we really pride ourselves at GEM at being able to monitor is the total level of early stage entrepreneurial activity. So basically startups. And we can also compare that to established business ownerships, which are established companies that start moving into an arena where they actually provide more employment to others. So 3 economies, all in Europe, had less than 1 in 20 adults starting or running a new business. However, more than 1 in 3 adults in Togo, Panama, and Colombia were starting or running a new business in 2020, rising to 1 in 2 in Angola. And all the Latin American economies had 1 in 5 or more adults engaged in startup activities. Now, what's a little worrying here is that there was much less variation in established business ownership, with 10 economies with established business ownership less than 1 in 10 adults, and 10 and 12 economies where T, as we call it, the early stage entrepreneurial activity, was less than established business ownership. So of the 35 economies, and there were 21 where early stage entrepreneurship had fallen, including 9 where the early stage entrepreneurship fell by more than a quarter. All of the regions being represented. So there was also 4 economies where the early stage entrepreneurship increased more than a quarter. These were Oman, Egypt, Panama, and Colombia. And 8 economies where the established business ownership fell more than a quarter. So as I say, very concerning, the issues around, those blue lines there, the blue bars on established business ownership, and just indicating that, of course, in the first 6 months of the pandemic, we were already seeing a kind of barrier or halt to the potential to establish your business, having been a startup before. There were 9 economies where there were more than half of those starting or running a new business, so new opportunities that they wish to pursue because of the pandemic. Those are the orange bars here in this graphic. So new opportunities because of the pandemic. Let's look a little bit at diversity and entrepreneurship. There were 9 economies where less than 1 in 20 women were involved in early stage entrepreneurship. In contrast, and this is interesting, more than 1 in 3 women in Togo and Angola, and at least 1 in 5 women in each of the Latin American and Caribbean economies, they were participating in early stage entrepreneurship. So looks like women actually took a role, a very proactive role in establishing new businesses during those early months of the pandemic. The lowest level of early early stage entrepreneurship for men were in Europe, actually, where less than 1 in 10 men were involved in early stage entrepreneurship in 10 European economies. And that's quite interesting. I mean, it may be an indication of the, the fact that there was more security, of course, when there are furloughing schemes and other, and this basically has a kind of, demotivating factor perhaps for people to go out there and to actually establish or start up their business. There were 6 economies where the early stage entrepreneurship was greater than that for men. And so that's, again, pointing to a very active situation for women. Again, regarding job growth expectations, this graph actually shows you what the expectations were in terms of job creation from 0 jobs to 1 to 5 jobs, or the very dark line is 6 or more jobs. So there were 11 economies where half or more of those involved in early stage entrepreneurship expected to employ no one else but themselves in 5 years' time. So, again, interesting, because what really points to growth, what really helps economies in the end of the day, of course we need the startups, but we also need them to be moving into an established business scenario, and they also need to be startups in order for the economy to grow and for job security to kick in. They need to be startups that actually will lead to several jobs over time and more jobs with growth. Now, in terms of motivation, there's a widespread agreement clearly across economies, reflected here in the graph, that, obviously, I mean, this may not seem like rocket science, but that starting or running a business was more difficult than 1 year previously. And an even wider agreement that the pandemic has led to delays in getting that business operational. And there are very interesting regional differences in those motivations. For all of the Central American, Central and East Asia economies, except India, and in all Middle Eastern and African economies, except Angola, greater wealth had more agreement than making a difference. So what we actually ask the people we survey is whether, what are their motivations for actually creating a business. And we give them an option which is more aspirational, making a difference in the world. We also give them an option, we give them a few options, but then another option is to build great wealth or very high income. So we've taken just those 2 options here and compared them. And as you can see, there's quite an aspirational focus of startups making a difference in the world. This could be a social or environmental orientation, but not only. It could be just simply, a kind of visionary, digitally based or whatever, to make a difference in the world. And as you can see, wealth kind of dominates in the Middle Eastern and Africa in terms of response, but not so much in quite a few places in the rest of the world. Okay. So in terms of investment, less than 1 in 20 adults invested in someone's business in 29 of the 43 economies in 2020. And only five economies, there was only 5 economies where the rate was greater than 1 in 10. And that included Angola and Togo, for example, which, by the way, also had relatively high early stage entrepreneurship rates. And then only 6 economies, all of which were high income, had a rate that was greater than 1 in 20 adults, and the median investment was $5,000 or more. Now, there are 2 slides here. Just let's zoom in a little. This is the Middle East and North Africa region. and it covers the motivation and behavior surrounding investment in entrepreneurs. We see here a strong relationship between entrepreneurial employee activity and the median amount invested informally in startups. And we see a strong general relationship between entrepreneurial employee activity and median investment. So what does this suggest? It suggests that in the economies where there are higher entrepreneurial employee activity rates, more investment is needed to drive high impact entrepreneurship. And this is due to the fact that if someone can act entrepreneurially in their current job as measured by the entrepreneurial employee activity, which is also something that we measure, and they will need a bigger incentive in the form of money and the allure of creating high impact new business to justify leaving their current job. So it makes sense that the median investment in these economies would need to be higher to attract entrepreneurial people from their current job. So why is this important? It's important for policymakers because it demonstrates that one of the strong barriers to generating higher entrepreneurship rates is actually the entrepreneurial employee activity and the amount of investment. The second slide that I have is to cover Sub-Saharan Africa, which, as you know, we had a kind of a very much reduced sample here, but it's still very telling and indicative. The entrepreneurial employee activity rates in these three economies are low compared to the Middle East and North African economies. So median investment is quite low also. And here instead, there is a stronger relationship between knowing someone who has started a business in the past 2 years and the total rate of informal investment among adults in those economies. It suggests that there is a general entrepreneurial appetite in these economies, as evidenced by both the high rate of knowing someone who has started a business in the last 2 years, as well as the higher rates of informal investments by adults. Therefore, it appears that the higher rates of knowing entrepreneurs, even if they're mostly necessity driven, which means they actually created a business out of necessity, it leads, this is often the case in lower income economies, this leads to more adults investing in others' new businesses in these three economies. So why is this interesting for policymakers? Well, they should study this relationship to consider how possible networks could be formed amongst sub-Saharan entrepreneurs and those willing to invest in them. So based on the trends, this could spur more entrepreneurship and potentially higher levels of median investment amounts, as entrepreneurs could better match their offer with new investors. I want to leave a few minutes, I think, for questions. I'm very quickly going to show you the national entrepreneurship context work that we do, which Alicia actually leads, Alicia Corduras, who's on this call also. And we have a number of conditions, framework conditions they are called, 9 conditions, they're listed here. You can go to the website to understand, why those conditions are in place, or also read the report. But just to show you what we actually do, really this is just an overview. I mean, I could talk really all day about this and I just don't have that time. But this is the National Entrepreneurship Context Index, where we actually measure against those framework conditions and we rank the countries accordingly. As you can see, Indonesia heads up, surprisingly, maybe surprisingly for some people, this year in terms of the conduciveness of its conditions for entrepreneurship. So I'd invite you, if you're curious, to actually go check that up. Why is that the case? Alicia has actually written an excellent paper analyzing these factors, and it's on our website. An interesting one too is the fact that experts rated the entrepreneurial response to the pandemic as strongly positive, but they were much, much less convinced by governmental responses to the pandemic. So this is also a very interesting one. So basically, you know, I end with an encouragement to, you know, if you're out there, if you're with a research team, maybe consider joining GEM, especially if you're in a university in Africa. We really need you. And I'm very happy to take, I don't think we have a whole lot of time for questions, but maybe one, two or three questions. Simon, what do you think? Thank you.
No, absolutely. Thank you, Aileen, for that comprehensive and summarized version of the research. I do have a question. This relates to, of course, you did make mention of policymakers. Are you still going to share the screen?
Well, it is. Oh, you want me to go back to the one on to one of the slides? I am sharing it still.
No, no, you can. I think you can stop sharing so that.
Oh, to stop sharing. I beg your pardon. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. No, we just wanted to be able to see you,
yes,
and interact with you. So obviously, you've done an excellent job in this research, and this is evidenced by the comments that we are getting. And once again, anyone is free to please either raise your hand or just type your question in the chat box, and we'll pass this on to Aileen. But my first question to you is, obviously you deal with a large array of businesses, countries where entrepreneurship is thriving. What are the key elements that policymakers can make to ensure that entrepreneurship thrives?
Okay, well, all I can do, and I think you know, in some ways I could go back almost to the slide deck and show you the entrepreneurial framework conditions, because
by all means, please do.
Yes. So let's have a look. Well, it's not moving on me now. I don't know why. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, basically all of the above, you know. So there's a matter of finances, introducing policies that are relevant and supporting, looking at your taxes and bureaucracy, introducing government entrepreneurship programs at, you know, different levels. Education. Education is an extremely important one, and it's one where I think across the board, I can safely say most countries, including in European and North America, are falling behind in terms of the entrepreneurship education. Also research and development transfer, you know, this idea of creating, you know, which has really taken hold, hubs, you know, and being able to share knowledge brokering, etc. Commercial professional infrastructure in place, ease of entry to the market, taking out burdens, taking out regulations, so putting into place a physical infrastructure, which of course, you know, roads. This is an issue, obviously, in some countries in Africa. I mean, me having traveled there a great deal, physical infrastructure such as roads sometimes, you know, need a lot of investment. And then, of course, you have to overcome social and cultural norms sometimes. You know, sometimes simply in countries, entrepreneurship is sort of looked down on, if you like. The more appealing jobs are, you know, perhaps in the state entities. So yeah, all of these framework conditions, and I think, well, Alicia might like to kick in too. I don't think those framework conditions change so much because of the pandemic. They're just going to be more reinforced. What do you think, Alicia? Oh yes, I'm sorry. For Alicia to speak, you have to release her mic. She could add to it, I think, because she actually coordinates the survey. Yeah.
Thank you, Aileen. We all know that these conditions, when we measure them, we can see that they are relatively stable, and that when something extraordinary happens, it takes some time to capture the impact. So I think that this year we are going to reflect in our measurement the impact of 2020 and so on. It takes at least one year to see a big impact in our indicators about the framework conditions. But as you showed in 2 slides after, measuring the reaction on entrepreneurs and governments has been much more informative in this aspect, because it reflects that the reaction of entrepreneurs has been much more proactive, because they always tend to survive and to go ahead, while institutions are slower. And in developed countries, they are more focused on the big economy than in the called secondary economy, SMEs, autonomous, and micro businesses. So I think that half of countries have lived a very difficult situation, and it has been especially in developed countries, while developing countries always show a less healthy framework conditions. You know that it is not expected that they improve in the short time, in the short term. They need time, okay? So the pandemic has not worsened these conditions. They are already not good in average for these countries.
Yeah, no, thank you for that comprehensive answer, Alicia, once again. And so we'd like to direct back the question to you. The purpose of the conference is to share some encouraging statistics, basically for entrepreneurs to continue on this entrepreneurial journey. From your research, I know you have quite a large array of statistics and facts. Are there some encouraging stats or information that you have for us, just to encourage entrepreneurs to keep going, and where entrepreneurs are successful, what are they doing that ensures their success? I don't know if you're able to speak to that.
Well, I think actually there's actually some very good news, and not so much for North America and Europe, but for the other regions of the world, and that includes Africa and the Middle East, is that the entrepreneurial climate is highly buoyant, that actually these economies react more, in a more agile way to things like a pandemic, that people get out there and start creating businesses. And it's indicative, our research, and I think I mentioned it several times, pointing to the graphics, the research actually indicates that there is this kind of vibrant dynamic. And I think Africa in particular is actually showing that. So as long as governments kick in and start creating this cohesive framework conditions, and that will promote entrepreneurship, which is absolutely in their own best interest. That's what leads to growth, creating companies, and as I said, making it easy for startups, those great ideas that people come up with, to convert into those established businesses that actually, in the end of the day, create jobs. you know? So it's up to governments to a very large extent, I think, in the region, because the people are motivated, the women are very motivated, and I think it's really great news for Africa if only the governments will. I'd love them to work with us more on this research.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Now, Aileen, can you just please share with us where in particular you are from and what's the entrepreneurial spirit in your country, and what are some of the initiatives that are perhaps being done in your country to encourage entrepreneurship?
Okay, well, I don't actually live in my country. I am Irish, an Irish national. I live in Switzerland and have been living in Switzerland for the last 35 years or so. So I guess I'm nearly Swiss, but not quite. And I happen to live in Lausanne. Lausanne is populated with leading schools and universities. And what I observe is that increasingly around in this area, at least, we have innovation hubs that are churning out, you know, that are taking the ideas that are coming out of the universities. Like, for example, we've the École Polytechnique de Lausanne, you know, and actually the government has been putting into place conditions whereby these ideas, these creative ideas from young up and coming entrepreneurs can actually go convert into viable businesses, you know. Also looking at the investment vehicles, where I find that that Switzerland maybe falls down is in creating those conditions for the non-tech entrepreneurs, right? So tech is really high in the agenda. And so now in the conditions of the pandemic, I have to say, I actually think that that has come against the Swiss, you know, but that, you know, that story will be told during this research cycle, and we'll start to see the effects on Switzerland of these kind of policies. So it's really quite fascinating, you know, the sort of seeing the impact play out in the research in GEM.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, fantastic. I mean, that's quite interesting. I see Alicia's got a hand raised. Alicia, you are unmuted.
Thank you. I would like to stress that one of the conditions that most worries us, because it's very difficult to change it into positive, is the implementation of entrepreneurial education, especially at schools. And I think that entrepreneurs should take some action to contact schools and try to give some speeches there or make some action so professors on this on entrepreneurship are trained, because there is a very big deficit on this worldwide. Yeah. But I think that in Africa, because of your culture, you could do something original and innovative and show the world that this can be implemented in schools somewhere. Because there is a lot to do, and you are very original because of your culture. And I think that it could be a good idea to give a thought around this condition. Okay, just wanted to share this feeling. Thank you.
Sure. No, thank you, Alicia. For, I mean, you really gave some practical advice. Schools, professors, and you had some very encouraging thoughts for us here in Africa in terms of the entrepreneurial drive. We have a question from Jalal Nasir. We are going to unmute you now, so if you don't mind, you may you may ask your question. You are unmuted.
Yeah, thank you very much. My question is to Aileen. Could you please share a case where a country in MENA or Africa region that used GEM insights to improve a policy in hand or to introduce a policy in response? That would be so rich, and I think it would help greatly to understand how to use GEM at policy level or at entrepreneurs level.
Well, thank you for your question. I actually think it is very interesting what we have been doing with GEM and the UAE, United Arab Emirates, because if you go into the United Arab Emirates governmental sites, you'll see that they have an overall strategy on entrepreneurship, thinking right forward until 2030. So that's actually quite long-term thinking for a government, I think. Now, what are we doing? We've actually, I think a lot of the motivation within GEM has actually come from this region to actually put into place this comparative index, the results of which we showed you in the graphics, the National Entrepreneurship Index. And we will be, over the next few years, probably developing that with inputs from UAE as they move forward, because the UAE is actually using this rating index as a kind of strategic platform to push forward its own policy making. And so I can just encourage other governments to consider doing something similar, because as we've moved forward and as we move out of the pandemic, we definitely intend to develop this index more and to have more countries participate, because we've been impacted by the pandemic in terms of participation. I think entrepreneurship is now at the center of strategic thinking in governments across the world. So I would expect that over the next 3 to 5 years, we shall increase our membership. We'll have more people participating in this index, more comparison between countries, and more impact on governmental strategies on entrepreneurship. I hope that gives you a good idea. I mean, I don't take a case from Sub-Saharan Africa. One reason is because it's a little early. We have worked a little bit sporadically with some countries on the continent where they're in, they're out. So comparison over time has not been very easy. We're looking at ways in which we can stabilize our African involvement. Angola, consistently participates, but Togo and Burkina Faso were new teams, so I can't really point to an example yet. But I'm sure those teams who are working with their policymakers will be trying to ensure that they kind of can use the research to influence policy.
Fantastic. I think we saw a thumbs up from Jalal. There's one. Is there a thought that you wanted to add to that, Alicia, or can I proceed to the next question? You are unmuted, Alicia. Is there a thought that you wanted to add to that?
Sorry, I did not understand because I was writing to Jalal. What did you ask, please?
What's the question? Yeah.
Oh, okay. No. I hadn't asked the question.
Okay.
But basically, this relates to women in entrepreneurship. Would you encourage? Well, of course, in our audience, especially in Africa and South Africa, we're seeing a large number of women taking up entrepreneurship. You did share some of the stats, but just as a way of encouragement to women in general. Of course, we're going to share this link, and it's going to be viewed by much more people. So some will be women. So what would be your thoughts, your encouragement toward them? I mean, you've seen quite a diverse array of research into this. So what would you say as an encouragement to them, and what should they anticipate post-COVID? I know I'm sort of putting you on the spot, but it's good just to explore these ideas for them, and also your answers will be visible to policymakers to see also as to what they can do to make entrepreneurship to thrive with women as well.
Okay, I think we see a landscape out there, political landscape, where I don't think it can be denied that women are very much the focus of policies worldwide. How do we get women into the workforce? How do we actually support women entrepreneurs? I think the figures speak for themselves in terms of, the stats that I presented there, that African women are creative, entrepreneurial characters. and what they need is just the push. I think the world of work post-pandemic obviously the pandemic had a devastating effect on women because the child-caring role kicked in. It was very, very difficult for people to juggle everything that they were supposed to, to juggle everything. But I think in the end of the day, maybe the new working world that will emerge from this pandemic may be more conducive to women entrepreneurs. The work from home, the remote working certainly may play into the strengths of women, that they will be able to reorganize and recalibrate and be able to do more things in terms of entrepreneurship, online entrepreneurs, etc. One of the companies that we have been collaborating with, in fact, was the sponsor of our report, the one I pointed to at the beginning of the presentation on diagnosing impacts on entrepreneurship, is Shopify. Shopify has been providing platform for entrepreneurs across the world and has been one of the lucky companies that has benefited hugely from the pandemic, because more and more entrepreneurs are going online. So I think, maybe this new world that we will emerge into after the pandemic may be more conducive to women and the sort of multitasking roles that they have tended to take. So I would be very optimistic, actually, especially for women in Africa. Because one of the things that I realized as I traveled around Africa is just how multitasking African women are. It's incredible. They really are, take on a lot, even if they're not entrepreneurs.
And I would like to add that it is very important that not just women, but women and men learn how to create teams, entrepreneurial teams, more than trying to be independent and single entrepreneurs. It's very important that if someone has an idea, a good idea, look for good partners, because it is possible that this idea needs from different people to develop. You know that one of the big problems is financing. We have seen it in the previous speech. So this is difficult and hard to deal with, and financial education is very necessary and scarce. But if you look for partners that are specialists in this area, and how to approach the customer, marketing, etc. If you create teams instead of individual entrepreneurial initiatives, there are more probabilities of success. So people need to learn how to form and teams and start businesses in group, not individually, in my opinion, and from our experience. I think that this is very important to take in consideration.
No, fantastic. Yep, please add to that.
If I could, sorry, Simon, I beg your pardon.
No, please go ahead, Aileen. Please add to that.
It's just, I wanted to mention that as with governments, GEM itself has decided that women's entrepreneurship is worthy of even more focus than what we devoted to it in the past. In the past, we produced a women's entrepreneurship report every 2 years, and we made a decision in 2020 to produce one every year. And we now are attracting sponsors for that report. Interest from the Cartier Women's Initiative, for example, who has decided to support us in this effort. And so in September this year, the end of September, we will be producing a women's entrepreneurship report based on the same data from which we drew for this presentation. And this will give us insights also on a sub-regional level on women's entrepreneurship. But as I say, we intend to grow this topic of interest and the constellation of interested partners around it, and should have more and more to say about women's entrepreneurship moving forward.
Absolutely. So most people hold back from starting entrepreneurship because of the supposed lack of support from government. But what is your thoughts in terms of someone who wants to start a business? Do you need to have the mindset of needing support, or should one just go for it regardless of whether there's support or not? What are your thoughts on that?
Basically, it isn't. I think any entrepreneur has to do the basic groundwork, in order to understand whether A, the idea is a good one, and B, does it fly? An entrepreneurs are born, but you can also make them into better entrepreneurs, let's say, I mean, they say entrepreneurs are born and not made, but I actually, being an educator and previous to GEM, I joined GEM in 2019. Before that, I was working with a leading business school, IMD, for 15 years, and another smaller business school for 3 years. And I realized that working with executives that, there are a lot of very creative people out there. But one of the reasons Alicia is pointing to the need for putting into place education systems, both at school, but also post-school, is because you can make entrepreneurs better, and the more an entrepreneur has knowledge about the conduciveness of, or lack thereof, of the context that they are working in, and the more they can unite together, and actually pitch the government. It can be an extraordinarily strong pitch, especially post-pandemic. Pitch the government to actually do more and put more conditions in place. So I hope that answers your question, Simon.
No, that's well said. Is there a thought that you wanted to add to that, Alicia? Let's unmute you.
No, I really agree. So, but if governments are not enough sensitive regarding entrepreneurial education, I think that entrepreneurs can take some action and interact with schools themselves, because maybe showing examples and experiences, it's going to motivate professors and teachers to ask government to implement some subjects on entrepreneurship on schools. Because it's the worst condition everywhere in all countries, and it does not change. And I think that maybe we need a different approach, because it's very important. If we want that entrepreneurs qualify and succeed, they need knowledge, and they need to know what they are going to confront, because some people think that it's enough with having an idea. No, 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 but you must make it real and sustainable, and this is not easy, and this requires some knowledge, because if not, as you have seen in our graphs, established businesses are a low proportion in all countries, because volatility of new businesses is very high, especially in developing countries. And this is not desirable. We should aspire to get successful businesses, not just for 1 year or a few months. No, we need that they try to stay in the market.
You know, I'll say one thing, Simon, if that's okay. I did some research myself, this is before I started with GEM, on the role of the business school and universities in tomorrow's society, you know. And one of the things that, you know, you could say is that we are, unfortunately, because of the hierarchical structures, sometimes in universities, etc., you know, the way we operate is so fixed in terms of the model. It's very, very difficult to actually break it down. And I would say business schools and universities, more so universities, have really not moved with the times and need to re-question their ways and means of doing things into the future. You know, we need a lot more, less kind of sage on the stage, as they call it, and more of the guide on the side approach, where, you know, practicalities and practical application of some of the theory is really becoming more important, you know. And unfortunately, we have a world where research and theory, especially in the business disciplines, predominates. Sometimes publishing papers that really aren't ever looked at by, certainly not by business people. So I think that whole arena, it's starting to be under question now, and that too will form the basis of new models into the future.
No, absolutely. I agree with you. There's a lot of talk, especially amongst entrepreneurs, where there are business study courses, and you are learning case studies from 1970s, and the business, exactly, and the business landscape is constantly changing. Alicia, excuse me, Aileen, you made mention of something that I'd like to ask you more about. You said entrepreneurs are born. Can you please broaden that a little bit? It's an interesting concept, and I really appreciate this spur of the moment questions, because they really you learn more nuggets from when a person speaks off the cuff. There's a lot of information to be gleaned from that, and I'm sure those in attendance will gain a lot from. You've studied entrepreneurship from quite some time. You speak, I don't know how many languages you speak, but you can tell us now. So you do know the broad spectrum of entrepreneurship, and so I respect your opinion, which is why I'm asking you, when you say entrepreneurs are born, can you please just expand on that a little bit?
Well, you know, I think, look, I have family here, and there's no doubt that you see from the early stages of a child's existence whether they are, you know, someone who is, you know, naturally inclined to create activities that actually are almost like little products and services, you know, to the family, you know. So there's no doubt that a child may be born being almost an entrepreneur, but you can kill it, you know. How can you kill it? You can kill it through these social and cultural norms that Alicia measures, you know, in her instrument. national culture or even family culture or even, just local culture can kill entrepreneurship. So, I would say it's a mixture between what I call nature, being born with those tendencies, and nurture, which is to nurture them and sort of bring forward the entrepreneurial tendencies of people as they move forward. I think it may be an excellent example of that interaction in terms of nature and nurture is perhaps in the United States. Would you agree, Alicia? I mean, perhaps in the United States, this encouragement of ideas, idea creation, and bringing an idea to the fore, and developing it. That's why perhaps, Silicon Valley, etc., was so successful. But we can't take it for granted either, because at the same time you have a national context, as we've been saying. And so even in the United States, as you see in our graphics, it's falling behind in terms of, creating the conducive conditions for our entrepreneurship. So, that's what I would say. Yeah, thank you.
GEM is observing that in developed countries, as people get jobs for public institutions, and the natural instinct of being entrepreneur goes down. Okay, that is why in developing countries, because people does not have so much jobs as an employee, private or public, they keep this instinct, which is natural. All of us are entrepreneurs because we need to survive in this world. But if you are an employee for others, then you don't develop this inclination, this natural willing of doing something, of creating something, of looking for opportunities, because you don't need them. You are comfort in your work, and then you tend to not to think. Those people that have a very developed instinct, entrepreneurial instinct, keep this way even within an organization or a company. And this become, if they have the opportunity, entrepreneurs, corporative entrepreneurs, okay?
Yeah.
But most people forget that they are entrepreneurs in the end, okay? So if they don't have to fight and to survive, they just forget about it. But it would be good that we keep this spirit. Of course, in the United States, and for example, here in Spain, in Catalonia, there are specific regions or countries where there is a strong entrepreneurial culture. And then there are more entrepreneurs, because if you grow in a family where there is a business, then you have a direct example. And in the past, in the 60s, for example, in Spain, everybody, most of people, 90% of people was born in a family where there was a business. So it was natural that there were a lot of entrepreneurs. But as the country developed, there were more and more employees. And that is why, for example, in Japan, they had for many years one of the lowest tier rate, because there are so many big companies, so many employees, that there are not enough entrepreneurs.
No. Any thoughts that you want to add to that, Aileen? Or can I proceed to the next question?
No, please do proceed. Thank you.
Okay. So our next question is, it's a question that relates to the fact, well, we are about to close now, and thank you so much for your time. But in your answers, don't rush it. Please take your time. So I'll direct these questions firstly to Aileen, and of course, Alicia, then you can chip in as well. But can you just share with, because people who come and present at times we just see them on our screen, but it's just nice to know the individual and their background and how they got to this point. So with you, Aileen, you did touch on it a bit, but you're obviously both passionate about entrepreneurship, and you're passionate about just the various countries. You don't just look at the world in general, but you do have a specific emphasis and focus on particular districts. What led you to this point of being where you are now at GEM and being focused on entrepreneurship? Can you please just share with us your journey? And when you do so, next time we contact you, then we know you a little bit more better.
Sure, it's really an interesting question, Simon, because basically, I started my career with an environmental NGO, as I mentioned earlier. It's a Worldwide Fund for Nature, or World Wildlife Fund, as it's called in the US. I spent 8 of 13 years with WWF, managing programs in Africa. I became very interested in the interface between the environment and business, and decided then to start working with the business school as a research manager, and eventually I headed up the research center at IMD Business School in Switzerland around corporate sustainability. And what the business, a lot of it was around, how do you actually get a business rationale for doing anything at all about the environment beyond compliance, As I moved forward, and I spent 15 years with IMD, I began to realize that pretty much, the multinationals that I was working with they were back up against the wall. They really couldn't make much of a business case for moving forward anymore because of the issue around the level playing field, the competition issues. If you start spending a lot of money on saving the environment beyond compliance, well, then you enter into problems with competition. And so that's when I started getting interested in entrepreneurship, actually, because I thought, well, if we can start businesses that are primarily focused on solving some of the world's biggest challenges, then we have a winner there. We have businesses that actually are not destroying the earth, and businesses that are actually contributing back, and being a social value to society. So, I spent 3 years with a small business school where I worked with small groups of students to kind of create startups which would be oriented towards solving some of these issues, environmental and social issues that are out there. And at that point, I got interested in GEM and transited over to GEM as the executive director. It's been a really, really interesting journey, I have to say.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. Let's hear from Alicia.
Well, Simon, I am an economist and specialized in statistics. So I have been teaching for many years in different Spanish universities, statistics and econometrics. And in 1999, I went to Madrid to work for the IE Business School. And then we became partners of the GEM project from the very beginning. And I managed the project in Spain as technical director until 2012. In the meantime, in 2007, I was very honored by Michael Hay, our Miss Michael Hay, one of the creators of the GEM project, and very committed with Africa. He developed here lots of projects to foster entrepreneurship. And then he asked me to replace the NES coordinator because he was leaving the previous coordinator. And I say, yes, of course, I will work for GEM in the GEM staff. So I am managing this part of the project since 2007. I feel very honored, and believe me, we never get tired, because every year, yes, because people say that you are doing the same work, and I say, no, every year is different. Every year we have new questions, new challenges. We discover new aspects of entrepreneurship, and we are never bored because we have a lot to learn, and entrepreneurship is alive. It's something that is changing all the time. So it's amazing working for GEM, believe me. And we would like, we are very proud when we see results that that some policymakers listen us, follow our recommendations, and this is very important for us. So thank you very much for this opportunity, Simon, and I wish you and Africa all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that encouraging thought on entrepreneurship and on your journey in general. We see there's a number of, Jalal is giving you a virtual round of applause there. And so just in closing, how can people get in touch with GEM, and in particular, which institutions are you passionate about working with, so that when they contact you, they can have the most benefit to entrepreneurs?
So people can get in touch with us. I mean, if you go into the website, you'll find plenty of opportunity to get in touch with us. Why? Because we're really trying to grow. You probably got the message, we're really trying to grow the organization. And so you can either go into the website and just contact either me or Laura Freeburn, our operations manager, directly. You can also connect with us on Twitter. It's at GEM Now, or Facebook. And we're also on LinkedIn, so there's plenty of opportunity. You can join us on Facebook, join us on LinkedIn, and really become part of our network. If you want to receive, go into the website. If you want to receive our newsletters, you can go into the website and be able to provide you with that. But we're, as I said, especially interested in Africa at the moment. It is a very dynamic continent for entrepreneurship, and we need more data.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, thank you for that. Just in closing, do you have, there are some entrepreneurs who have really endured from 9:30 up until now. Do you have perhaps an encouraging thought, you Aileen, and lastly Alicia, that you just like to share with the entrepreneurs? Just an encouraging thought. It doesn't have to be spectacular, but whatever you can think of.
Well, look, I think entrepreneurs are fantastic people, in the sense that, despite many odds, they usually are extremely passionate about their idea and pressing it forward. And I really do encourage people who are out there working on their companies to stick with it, but also to empower yourselves by networking with other entrepreneurs. And as Alicia has said, try and band together, form constituencies, like almost a cooperative of entrepreneurs, and pitch and lobby and empower yourselves. It's very important not to be kind of on your own trying desperately to make a company work. Link with others. That's what I would say.
Fantastic. Alicia?
Yes. I just want to encourage everybody and remind what I said before. Don't lose your entrepreneurial spirit, because there is an entrepreneurial side of each of us, and we should not forget that. And this world is changing, but in Africa there is a lot to do. And you have the opportunity because you did not get the models of developed countries. You can go for a different model and not just create big companies to give to have a lot of employees. You have the opportunity to do something different, and this will keep alive the entrepreneurial spirit. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Alicia, for that. We've now come to the end of the conference, and thank you all for really availing yourselves to take in this information. Whatever you have learned, don't just learn, but put it to practice in your business. That's how you are going to see progress. And with regards to what we've learned so far, GEM were our last speakers for the day, and you can see why. They are the authority in terms of research in entrepreneurship. So we are going to make this link available publicly, and if there are entities that are interested in working with GEM, please feel free to reach out to them. They are very pleasant people to deal with, and in terms of the discussions that we've had, we've seen that they are approachable and they are keen to especially work with Africa. And thank you all in attendance once again for making the time. And just another thought, with us in attendance, we've had people from various African countries who've attended. At the moment, we've got Spain, we've got Zimbabwe, we've got Aileen, which country are you from again?
Ireland.
Not from, but where are you now?
In Switzerland.
In Switzerland, yeah. So just think about that. South Africa, Switzerland, and Spain. So the virtual landscape has changed, and so this conference it's virtual, and it just shows the reality of the times in which we live in now. So as an entrepreneur, one needs to adapt, and the world is no longer small. It's global. You can reach out and get in touch with anyone. So don't hesitate, but also take note of the changing landscapes. Don't hold on to the old ideas which can leave you behind. We've seen that the businesses that were able to thrive and survive throughout COVID are those who were able to adapt. So we look forward to speaking to GEM representatives once again for the next edition. We will definitely have you, and I'm sure you'll be able to give us an update of some of the research that you've done. Thank you so much for availing yourselves. You know that in terms of time differences, there's a bit of a difference there, but we appreciate your time and your sacrifice in making yourselves available. And in terms of your organization, we wish you well, and may you keep championing the entrepreneurship journey. So with that, thank you for attending the conference, and we've now reached the end.
Thank you very much, Simon. It's been an absolute pleasure and great to be in touch with Africa again.
Thank you, and congratulations for the event.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.